defiles them. So what God is saying here is that any man, any woman, any boy or any girl in this church worshiping God who doesn't take care of his parents is a hypocrite. What this verse is saying, Jesus said, you worship me in vain. It's just a waste of time coming to church. It's a waste of time being part of the music team. It's a waste of time being part of certain ministry. It's a waste of your money, giving money to the church. And you're a big time giver. And you say, Lord, I'm doing my best to serve you. But you neglect your parents. God said, I'm not impressed. You worship me in vain. Friends, this is serious. Because we live in a society today where old people, they're just allowed to fend for themselves. You know, I remember when we visited the tribe that we are in at that time, 2 years or 3 years ago. We visited a senior's place. And they're just so lonely bunch of people, you know. They don't get a visit. I think they get a visit maybe twice a year during their birthday and maybe Christmas. But you know, old people, this is the time when they are to be with their loved ones. And sometimes Jude and I would think, you know, I don't think I'd like to retire in Canada. I'd better retire in the Philippines, where they take good care of old people, where the old people can stay with their kids. You know, it's not a bother to have your parents stay with you when they're old. They deserve it. They earn it. We need to take care of them. If my mom is here, she's 84 years old, there's no question in my mind. She will stay with me until she dies. We will serve her. We will protect her. We'll give everything we have to make the sunset years of her life just enjoyable. And it's so sad because we live in a society where old people are they're just a body. You know, I'm taking care of them, you know, I have to carry them around, I have to push their wheelchair, I have to change their clothes, it stinks. You know, I have to feed them. Well guys, remember there was a time when they changed you, they bath you, they have to change your diaper, and it stinks. And then you have to spit up on them. And that's why the Bible says it very clearly. If you don't take care of the old folks, if you don't take care of your parents, you are worse than an infidel. You don't even reach the level of an infidel. You are worse than an infidel. Here's how the Apostle Paul wrote it. He said, but if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn. Who's the these? Who's the subject of these? The children and the grandchildren. Alright? So it's talking about us children. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn first of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. You repay them out of the gratitude of your heart for the way they cared for you, how much they sacrificed for you. And then you repay them by failing in class. You repay them by cutting classes. You repay them by disobedience. That's not right. That's not pleasing to God. And then it says there, put the religion into practice. That means, friends, don't practice your religion in the community. Don't practice your religion in that school. Don't practice your religion in that office. Don't go anywhere else. First, practice your religion in the home. That's what it's saying. If you don't see Christianity in the home, you won't see it anywhere else. If in the church is where you only practice Christianity, then friends, God is saying, you worship me in vain. This is nothing but hypocrisy. And Paul continued in verse 8, he said, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their household, has denied the faith and is worse than unbeliever. You are worse than an unbeliever. You're considered worse than an infidel who doesn't care for his own. And so friends, we can honor our parents by the load that we live. But then thirdly, we can honor our parents by the lessons that we learn. We can honor our parents by the lessons that we learn. Solomon, the wisest man, said these words in Proverbs 1, 8-9. Lessons that you learn. He said, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head, and a chain to adorn your neck." Do you see that? When we listen to our parents, to their instruction, to their teaching, it's like a garland to grace your head. It's like a chain. Now, this is not a chain of slavery. This is a chain of gold to adorn your neck. And a lot of times we think as we grow older, that we're smarter than our parents. At 16, we think they're really out of it. At 19, we begin to feel that we have surpassed our parents. They will never catch up with us. We're wiser or more smarter than them. At 22, we just lost sight of them. They're somewhere back there. But then at the age of 40, we begin to reflect. You know what? My parents were right. That's why, friends, the older you get, the smarter your parents will get. I love this article, and I love reading this article. I made sure to print this article in your bulletin, so it's there in your bulletin so that you'll have a copy. But I want to read this for you, alright? Just follow with your eyes. I'm going to read to you The Meanest Mother. Are you ready? The Meanest Mother. Let me read this for you. Just follow with your eyes. "I have the meanest mother in the whole world. While other kids ate candy for breakfast, I had to have cereal, eggs, or toast. When others had Cokes and candy for lunch, I had to eat a sandwich. As you can guess, my supper was different than the other kids also. But at least I wasn't alone in my sufferings. My sister and two brothers had the same mean mother as I did. My mother insisted upon knowing where we were at all times. You'd think we were in a chain gang. She had to know who our friends are where and where we are going. She insisted that we said that if we said we began an hour, that we began 1 hour or less, not 1 hour and 1 minute. I am nearly ashamed to admit it, but she actually struck us. Not once, but each time that we had a mind of our own and did as we pleased. That poor belt was used more on our seats than it was to hold up Daddy's pants. Can you imagine someone actually hitting a child just because he disobeyed? Now you can begin to see how mean she really was. We had to wear clean clothes and take a bath. The other kids always wore their clothes for days. We reached the height of insults because she made our clothes herself just to save money. Why, oh why, did we have to have a mother who made us feel different from our friends? The worst is yet to come. We had to be in bed by 9 each night and up at 8 the next morning. We couldn't sleep till noon like our other friends. So while they slept, my mother actually had the nerve to break the child labor law. She made us work. We had to wash dishes, make beds, learn to cook, and all sorts of cruel things. I think that she lay awake at night thinking up mean things to do to us. She always insisted upon us telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, even if it killed us. And it nearly did. By the time we were teenagers, she was much wiser, and our life became even more unbearable. She embarrassed us to no end by making our dates and friends come to the door to get us. None of this tooting the horn of the car for us to come running. If I spent the night with a girlfriend, can you imagine? She checked on me to see if I really was there. I never had a chance to elope to Mexico. That is, if I had a boyfriend to elope with, I forgot to mention that while my friends were dating at the mature ages of 12 and 13, my old-fashioned mother refused to let me date until the ages of 15 and 16. 15, that is, if you dated only to go to a school function. And that was maybe twice a year. Through the years, things didn't improve a bit. We could not lie in bed sick while our friends did and miss school. If our friends had a toothache, a hangnail, or serious ailment, they could stay home from school. Our marks in school had to be up to par. Our friends' report cards have beautiful colors on them. Black for passing, red for failing. My mother, being as different as she was, would settle for nothing less than ugly black marks. As the years rolled by, first one and then the other of us were put to shame. We were graduated from high school, with our mother behind us talking, heeding, and respecting others, and demanding respect. None of us was allowed the pleasure of being a dropout. My mother was a complete failure as a mother. Out of 4 children, a couple of us attained some higher education. None of us have ever been arrested, divorced, or has been dismissed. Each of my brothers served his line in the service of this country. And whom do you have to blame for the terrible way we turned out? You're right, our mean mother. Look at the things we miss. We never got to march in a protest parade, nor to take part in a riot, board drop cards, nor a million and other things that our friends did. She forced us to grow up into God-fearing, educated, honest adults. Using this as a background, I am trying to raise my 3 children. I stand a little taller, and I'm filled with pride when my children call me mean. Because you see, I thank God. He gave me the meanest mother in all the world. Are there mean mothers here? Amen? You know, we deserve to have a mean mother. A mother who means business for God. They'll do all the sacrifice just for their children to be right with God. Listen, friends, we honor our parents by the life that you live. We honor our parents by the law that you live. We honor our parents through the lessons that you and I learned. But then some kids are saying, well, my parents are not as smart as I am. Well, friends, listen, kids, listen please. It's not about being smart. Yes, it may be true that your parents are not smarter than you. You're a computer-savvy individual. You know a lot of things. But friends, it has nothing to do with being smart. It all has to do with being wise. Your parents, they have more experience than you. They are wiser than you. You may be smarter than your parents, but you'll never be wiser than your parents. Now let me give you an example here. I know the kids are coming in. And as I've said, I want the Sunday school teachers to receive a copy of this manuscript because I want them to teach these little kids these lessons in a way that the kids will understand. Let me just illustrate to you that it has nothing to do with being smart. Are you listening? Are you listening? It has nothing to do with being smart. Let's suppose that my family is going to drive going to Montreal. Alright? Let's say my family is going to drive going to Montreal. Now let's also suppose that Josiah can already drive. He has his G2. Wow! And then let's also suppose that Rejoice can also drive already. She's now a full G. Alright. G. Wow. Let's suppose that Rejoice has her own car already, and Josiah already has his own car also. You know, it's out there in the future. So there's 4 of us, and there are 3 vehicles in the family. I mean, Rejoice would go to work with her car, Josiah would go to school with his car, and then Judy and I, we have our own car. And so it so happened that Josiah and Rejoice, they're doing something else, and we have to drive ahead of them going to Montreal. Alright? So here's the scenario now. So here's Judy and me. We're now driving to Montreal. We're now halfway to Montreal. Alright? That's about a 6-hour drive. We're about halfway to Montreal. And then Josiah started going to Montreal now, leaving home. And then an hour later, Rejoice also started driving going to Montreal. So there's 3 vehicles. We're ahead of them by 3 hours. And here's Josiah, and then here's Rejoice. And then we tried to call Josiah and told him, Josiah, when you reach Kingston, you need to avoid this particular road because there's a construction there. It delayed us by 30 minutes. Avoid this road in Kingston. And then we also called Rejoice to avoid the same road. And then an hour later, leaving Quebec, we called them and said to them, you will be passing by a great restaurant. It's on your right side. Make sure that you stop on that restaurant and have something to eat. It's a great restaurant. Now friends, look at this. Does that mean that we're smarter than our kids? No. It doesn't mean we're smarter. It simply means that we're a little farther down the road. We have seen the road. We know the delays. We know the detours. We know the dangers. And we're just warning our kids because we love them. We want them to avoid these dangers and we want them to enjoy those places. Friends, it has nothing to do with being smart. It has all got to do with wisdom. We're way ahead of you and we've seen the things that you haven't seen. And that's why I'm telling you right now, kids, you're here, you're listening to me. Listen very carefully. It would be foolish. It would be the height of foolishness for you to ignore the warnings of your parents. It's the height of foolishness to ignore the warnings of your parents. Especially if your parents are God-fearing people, they're praying for you, they're filled with the Spirit. You need to have second thoughts if you want to disobey them. You need to think hard before you disobey them. But if you obey them, then that's what Solomon says. It will be like a garland to grace your head. It will be a chain to adorn your neck. Listen to their advice. Do not ignore their instruction. And then fourth and lastly, we can honor our parents. Fill up your notes now. By the love that you lavish. By the love that you lavish. Now the word lavish obviously is a very descriptive word. But we are to love our parents with a great love because their lifeblood flows in us. Their very life is in us. And our parents will be willing to give up their lives for us. Friends, believe me, the closest picture of God's love for us is our parents' love for us. That's the closest picture you can have of God's love. Your parents' love for you. And so we are to return that love. If your parents are still living, let me encourage you to write a letter now, drop an email, pay a visit if you can visit them, send them a gift. Do that chore now. Give that kiss of affection to your mom and to your dad. And with a thank you note to your parents, and avoid what William Shakespeare once said, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a faithless child. How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a faithless child. You know, a child who is so ungrateful. I've shared with you before, but let me share that again. For many years of my life, I was so ungrateful to my mom. In fact, I hated my mom. Growing up, I just felt like my mom doesn't really love me. And it bothered me when she said, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and they just had a fight with my dad, and she said, you know, I could have put your dad to jail. I could have sued your dad. I didn't understand what that means. Until in my college days, when I look at my birth certificate, and I noticed that my birth is November 20, and their wedding date is just 6 months before November 20. So that means my mom was already 3 months pregnant when they got married. And I know something was wrong there. That means I was conceived out of wedlock. I am the eldest of 5 kids. And because my mom always scolds me, it's always my fault because I'm the eldest, I should give way to my brothers and sisters, I just got tired of it. And so I developed a lifestyle where I don't relate with my siblings. I don't relate with my brother, I don't relate with my sister, I don't relate with any of them. I'm just on my own. I just want to study, I just want to have good grades because that's the way I can please my mom, and then my mom will love me back. If I get good grades, my mom will love me. That was the mindset. But then when I started having these resentful feelings, and it has changed the way I relate to people, in fact, to the point that I don't want to have my own children. Because my childhood years, they were not so happy. They were kind of traumatic, and I just don't want to have kids. And I remember the night when my wife, Judy, informed me that she's finally pregnant after 2 years of trying.